Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our studies of 2 Samuel. Today we're in 2 Samuel chapter 2, and as we read yesterday in our studies of chapter 2, you have a situation where the kingdom of Israel is in many ways going to be divided. It's going to have this power vacuum that's in place after the death of Saul and Jonathan. And it's going to go multiple directions because of it. The people are not going to be united on which direction they're going to take. And so this morning, I want us to take a couple of different lessons from this particular chapter. And they're not necessarily so much going to be application lessons, though one of them will be. But they're more going to be historical lessons to help us better understand what it is that's going on and to help us better see some of the things that are going to be happening now but are also going to happen in the future. So let's look at a couple of things briefly today. First of all, here in chapter 2, you see that God's will and man's will are not always the same. In verse 4, you read that the men of Judah are going to anoint David as their king over the southern province of Judah, or over the tribe of Judah in the south, which is David's tribe. And so they are going to make David their king. But down in verses 8 and 9, you're going to have Abner, who was the chief military officer of Saul, who is going to make Ishbosheth, one of the sons of Saul, who was not killed in the battle, the king over the northern regions of Israel. And so you actually are going to have two different kings trying to take control over the people. Now, if you go back into 1 Samuel, God anointed David as the next king. He said David would be the next king. And yet, God's will is going one direction. Man's will is going another. God is also going to tell Saul that his line is no longer going to sit upon the throne. And yet Abner is going to try to make sure that the son of Saul is on the throne. Ishbosheth is not a child. It is stated that he is 40 years old when he is going to be crowned king by Abner. And yet it is going to be the case that he is not going to remain there for very long, and it's going to be under a constant state of turmoil. There is going to be this civil war that is going to break out for over a year in the region of Israel, that is going to be between David's servants and Ishbosheth's servants. And we see that start to play out in the middle and latter portions of chapter 2, because you have the contest that is going to take place between Ishbosheth's men and David's men. And they're going to have this contest as you read about it in verses 14 and 15. And they're each going to choose 12 men. And of those 12 men, they're going to have contests with one another. Verse 16 says, each one grasped his opponent by the head and thrust his sword in his opponent's side. They basically fought duels, 12 of them, between them and their opponents on the other side. And those duels devolved into an all-out battle between Joab's men and between Abner's men, otherwise known as David and Ishbosheth's men. And they wind up going into this very violent fight with one another, to the point that Abner is going to flee from the battle along with those that are with him. And he is going to be chased by Asahel. He's going to try to get Asahel to stop chasing him, but at his refusal, he is going to eventually stop and turn around and kill the young man. But that leads us into our third area, and that is the statements concerning these three brothers. And one of them, Abishai, has already been introduced in 1 Samuel, where he is going to go with David down into the camp of Saul on that night where David is going to show that he could have killed Saul but did not want to and refused to. But you read in verse 18 that there were 3 sons of Zeruiah, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. Joab is going to be the commander of David's army. Abishai is also going to be one of David's choice men. Asahel is going to die here in chapter 2 at the hands of Abner, even though Abner is reluctant to do it. These 3 men are going to be with David from the beginning, but they're also going to be with David until the times of either their deaths or David's deaths. And they are going to be very important to David, but they're going to be very important to David for a couple of reasons. Number one, their loyalty to David reigns supreme. But number 2, they are also family of David. If you turn over to 1 Chronicles chapter 2, there in the chronologies that are given there, you find in verse number 16 that Zeruiah is the sister of David. And so these 3 men are Zeruiah's sons. Zeruiah is not a man, it's a woman. And they are, by extension, David's nephews. Now, remember that David is the youngest of the sons of Jesse. And the indication is that Joab, Abishai, and Asahel are at least David's age and could possibly even be slightly older than David at this particular time. That they were quite likely even born about the same time as David, depending upon how the timelines were to play out. They're not necessarily younger than David, and certainly not significantly younger than David. But here you have these 3 young men that are not just loyal servants, they are family. And that is going to play into David's relationship with them over the course of the years. And so it's something important to realize now as we get fully into David's story. There's a lot of other things we could unpack from 2 Samuel chapter 2. We could see David's response to Jabesh Gilead. We could see the things that transpire with Abner and the way that Abner is looking at things in his concept. But maybe the most important thing of all that we haven't touched on yet is the fact, and even going back into our original statements, that David is the one who is going to be the king. It is stated that he is going to reign over Judah for 7.5 years before he is going to be made the full-fledged king of all Israel. He's going to have to fight for 7.5 years to get his own people to acknowledge what God has already put in place. And so there's going to be a great time of struggle in Israel. There's going to be a great time of competition and of disruption among the people of Israel. And all of this while the Philistines have taken a large chunk of control over the central portions of Israel with the death of Saul. So there's a lot going on here. And I hope that some of the things that we've discussed have been valuable to you and that they've helped you in your understanding. Next time we will come back and we will begin looking at 2 Samuel chapter 3. But until then, have a great day.